I wanted to take part in questioning the morality of spreading homo-negativity, and I wanted to take part in highlighting the consequences of such actions, because I don't think that any of the two sides want quotes like these. When you have years and years of people telling you it's sick and wrong, it wears on you, and you start to believe it. I still don't have self-esteem because of negative stuff I've been told my whole life. Because who I am is wrong. And I don't know how this compares to other denominations, but what I thought was interesting about this one is that it had over 2 million members in over 29,000 churches in 159 world areas in September of 2014, according to Wikipedia. And furthermore, this denomination has a missionary aim. So, if successful enough, they will create more neighborhoods and even societies with these teachings about homosexuals. And the gay people in these societies are likely to experience what Eric is experiencing through this email conversation. Well, let's take a look at what the pastor has said about homosexuality so far. It's a sin, it's outside of God's intention. This alone would have made me feel bad just having the feelings. Homosexual actions have implications beyond my personal life, for example, for families and societies. He says that God has a particular design and purpose for human sexuality that fits in with a larger story and plan of what creates the best kind of community and human flourishing, making me feel like I'm contributing to ruin happiness for all of us because of love. And also, I might be going to hell for disobeying. Right now, he's giving me the impression that the only way for me to reach happiness and mental health is by changing my sexuality or live a single life. And this is outright false and could lead to severe consequences for Eric. Now, even if no one would technically condemn, discriminate, or even say anything about it, except for they love me despite my sexuality, then we would still have problems, because first of all, I would still know that everybody would be thinking all these horrible things about such an important part of me. And second of all, there's a limit to how much you can say you love somebody despite things before it doesn't feel real anymore. When the pastor says that if Eric's parents really are Christian, he hopes that they love him despite the sexual orientation, I'm thinking like, if my parents had to look to Jesus in order to love me, I would feel like they show me love because they're Christian, rather than they truly love me. And to me, that would just feel artificial. So tell me, why am I the one to die here when homo-negativity and homophobia create bad feelings for both parties? They create non-acceptance, fear, and even hate towards homosexuality, feelings that would probably not have plagued people if they would have been taught a homo-friendly attitude. The consequences among homosexuals are raised frequencies of depression, anxiety, and suicide, and this is what the pastor is contributing to. I'm not saying that he does it intentionally, but that's the case. He's very clear about what he thinks about homosexuality and us acting upon it, and people listen to him, and so it spreads. Homosexuality, on the other hand, doesn't hurt anybody, either mentally or physically. So one path does harm and leads to pain for both parties, and the other hand creates love for both parties. Which of these paths do you really think is the will of God? So again, who should really die here? Is it me who should try to change my whole sexuality or turn my back on a very powerful kind of love? Or is it him who should simply rethink that part of his theology? I do recognize though that not all people have these consequences, even though there's homo-negativity around them. I'm only talking about risks and frequencies. And I'm thinking that some people might actually feel a sense of joy and reward sacrificing their sexuality by living a single life for what they believe is the greater good. I actually think that some people might feel it compensates for the lack of love that only a partner of the preferred sex can give them, but that doesn't mean it's healthy. It only means that they found a band-aid for the wound that has been afflicted on them by homo-negative voices. Now, does this mean that everything goes? Should we allow all and keep quiet about everything just because those who might be viewed as wrongdoers might feel bad otherwise? Of course not. But in this case, it's about two consenting humans capable and old enough to make their own decisions, expressing their love for each other. There is not one place in the Bible where homosexual practice is spoken of positively or even neutrally. Also, when Jesus says the two shall become one flesh in reference to marriage, it is clear that he is affirming the heterosexual marriage spoken of in Genesis, Adam and Eve, between a man and a woman to the exclusion of all others. As a result, I feel the Bible is pretty clear on this issue. I find it interesting that when the pastor mentions this passage about becoming one flesh, he fails to mention what comes after it. Therefore, what God has joined together, let man not separate. When they were in the house again, the disciples asked Jesus about this. He answered, anyone who divorces his wife and marries another woman commits adultery against her. And if she divorces her husband and marries another man, she commits adultery. So the pastor has just been on about that the three therapists don't share the Bible's perspective because he feels the Bible is clear about homosexual actions. And he has said that it's not fair or consistent to say you believe in God but not accept all of the definitions of God the Bible gives us, and that you cannot just pick some parts to follow and then ignore the rest. And now the pastor refers to a passage that very clearly speaks against divorce and remarrying when his denomination, as far as I know, allows both. So it seems like we both have reasons not to view the teachings in this passage as something that includes all men and women, which is actually supported. In Matthew 19:11, Jesus replied, "Not everyone can accept this word, but only those to whom it has been given." This church is just one of many denominations, and that there is no way to reliably prove what denomination interprets the Bible correctly. And this means that it's up to every person to go with the interpretation that he or she believes in. And of course, this includes the pastor. So, if it's picking and choosing for me not to follow his denomination, but instead go with a homo-friendly one, it is equally as much picking and choosing for him to go with his denomination instead of a homo-friendly one. And it also means that it's not about trusting Jesus, it's about trusting that this denomination interprets the Bible correctly. And lastly, it means that no one can claim they know for sure what morality God actually teaches in this case. Because even between Christians it's disputed what the Bible actually says about homosexuality. So even if the existence of God was proven, we would still have this discussion. So it all comes down to what you believe as opposed to what you know, so stop making it sound like this is about facts. Now, the following email was a bit special because it was time to tell him about my true intentions. I brought up the research that I've been reading, the ones that say that homosexuals have a higher rate of depression, anxiety, and suicide compared to heterosexuals. And I explained to him that it's due to homo-negativity. And then I said, quote, "This means that you as a pastor are contributing to these consequences with your homo-negative teachings. You teach that homosexuality is wrong, that homosexual actions have implications for societies and families. You discriminate them for marriage. You tell them that they are to change themselves or stop acting upon the love that they feel, basically giving them the message that what they are shouldn't be a part of this world. In here, we find discrimination, stigmatization, violation, and risks of creating internalized homo-negativity. By teaching these things, you risk creating feelings of insecurities, inadequacies, guilt, and shame. The very things you say make people feel drawn to certain urges. So, what are your thoughts about this? How is this moral?
how is this contributing to the mental well-being of gay people? Or did I misunderstand you? Also, how am I not supposed to feel any hint of condemnation when being told these things?
So, how do I think that the pastor should have handled the situation? I personally think that the pastor should stick to a gay affirming interpretation because, as I've said, that is the only way for both sides to find real peace, and it's also the interpretation that promotes the most love. However, in this case, I actually want to respect the pastor's interest not to go against his own faith, and therefore I would urge him not to say anything at all. But if he can't do that, he should at least tell the truth that there isn't any consensus about what the Bible actually says about homosexual actions, and then maybe he could provide unbiased information about the arguments of both sides so that the person he is talking to can form his or her own opinions. This way, the pastor stays neutral, avoiding going against his own faith, but still lowers the risk of causing harm.